Hello guys and welcome to another episode of Everyday EDC. My name is Tyler and today we have the Revo.Beseek. I had no idea about this knife until I found it on Drop, I think it was. Yeah, it was Drop. And I kind of was like, you know what, let's get a filler knife. It was rather cheap. I'm interested in everything knife, I guess, and we'll just check it out. It was kind of filling in between a bunch of different stuff that we have coming in and trying to work on. So I took it out of the box, and it was just this thing is so much more beautiful in hand than probably anybody expects. It's one of those things that, like, I have had several different knives to where I wasn't super stoked on it, but I bought it for maybe, somebody recommended it, somebody wanted to see it, that type of thing. Or you just hear so much good shit about it that you're like, I gotta see that freaking knife. So what I was getting at is that, you get those in, and a lot of times, even though you weren't expecting to like it as much as you did, you get it and you're like, oh yeah, okay. So you start using it and you're like, yes, I get it. But when you first open it, you're kind of like, whatever. So this one did that for me. I wasn't super stoked on it, and then I got it in hand, and I'm like, okay. I like this one a lot. I mean, this may be a blasphemy sound, but this kind of reminds me of the looks of like a Medford wannabe for $45, right? So I'll get into a couple different things. I am not going to do a cut test with this knife, but I will explain the story why and show what happened. So going on from here, we're kind of we'll look the knife over. I'll show you guys, tell you guys a little bit of the specs, and then we'll go into the comparisons, and I will talk about the knife at the end. So this is the version with a stainless steel frame on this side and a G10 on this side. They do have a G10 model, a stainless steel on both sides model. I kind of really like that I accidentally ended up with the G10 on one side because it adds a good bit of grip. Although both sides contrast pretty well. It's got a decent deep carry pocket clip that will carry pretty deep. I mean, you only got about 1/4 of an inch sticking out. It's got this green, I'm assuming, aluminum backspacer that has the lanyard tab hole thing in it, so that's pretty nice. These screws, kind of going more into the review, these screws, the pivot's a T8, and I believe everything else is a T6, but let's not eyeball it because I've been wrong on too many occasions. Okay, so everything else is a T6 on here. It's got 2 screws on either side and then 2 screws for the pocket clip. The pocket clip is ambidextrous, so that's pretty cool. Let's go into some specs. Use that as a segue because I really butchered my rhythm on this review here, which is all right. That's okay. Go outside the freaking box. Relatively thick blade stock. We're coming in at 140 thousandths. Let's check the behind the edge thickness. For 140 thousandths starting blade stock, this fat freaking guy gets down to, it gets down to about 20 thousandths. Not ridiculously slicey, not awful. Your super slicey Civivis are coming in at I think the sliciest I've seen is 10 thousandths, but their average is like 14 thousandths. So it's not too far off, but this isn't your laser beam slicer. Next, let's get into the weight of this guy. Okay, so the weight is coming in at a whopping 5.5 ounces. So most of you are going to say, no thank you. And that's quite all right, because if you do happen to purchase it, you can send it my way, because I do thoroughly enjoy this knife. So 5.5 ounces. Remember, you got a stainless steel frame on one side, a full G10 on the other, which is nice, and it's actually pretty solid, but we'll go further into... It's coming in at flat 8 inches, and the blade length is coming in at 3.5 with a cutting edge of it's kind of weird to say the cutting edge is longer than the blade length. Blade length's coming in at 3.5 if you're going tip to tip, but it's actually coming in at like 3 3/4 if you're going from where it actually ends. Plus, the whole blade is going for that. So you got quite a bit of cutting edge on this guy. All right, covered most of that. Now, let's get into some size comparisons for you guys so that everybody can kind of see what we're twerking with here. I said it. All right, there's your feldspar sandwich. And I'll talk a little bit going, oh, you dumbass. Move it on down. I'll talk a little bit, going through this. But as you can see, the regular size feldspar is coming in at right about the same length. And the mini feldspar is coming in at about 1.5 inches less. As always, I'm telling you why I'm showing you so many freaking knives is so there may be somebody out there who has not fallen for the niche that most of us have, or the itch rather, of purchasing way too many fucking knives. So you might not have seen the Dogma or the Durus, but you might have seen the feldspar. This is there to give you that reference so that when you have seen something on this list, and I try to show attainable things, that you can have a good comparison going forward. As you can see, this knife is dwarfing the Dogma, and it definitely dwarfed the Durus. Here is your notorious Rat Model 1, and your notorious BIG. As you can see, the Rat 1's coming in a little bit longer, but remember, this thing's cutting edge to full length ratio is pretty impressive. I need to rehab that Rat 2. That Rat 2 is a little weak. Last but not least, the PM2 is on vacation. He took a spa day for the next couple weeks. And then we have the Manix 2 and the Spyderco Astute. As you can see, I had a brain fart there. I was trying to think about, I just brain dumped everything. Manix 2's coming in right around the same size. And honestly, I'm going to say I might do a comparison video between these two. Not really a battle to the... Yeah, we could do a fucking battle to the death. I don't give a shit. But these two kind of remind me of each other. As you can see, the Manix 2 in this one, similar size. The Spyderco Astute coming in at much smaller. So, let's get to talking about why I'm not going to do a cut test on this. Today, I had this knife at work with me, and I was going to cut some thermocouple wire. The thermocouple wire was probably in between 1/8 and 1/4, so you're probably looking at, what is that? 3/16. It's about 3/16 thick. Now, obviously, it was a steel wire. And let's see here. Can we see what Tyler did that was friggin' stupid? You see those edges right there? It looks like Billy Bob's teeth. So I desperately was trying to cut this thing. I'm standing on top of a furnace that's cooking our metal at 1400 degrees, flames coming out of 4000 degrees. And so you don't really want to be up there that long. So I was like, all right, cut this fucking metal. I ended up not cutting the thing. And there's a whole story behind it. It's kind of that story. I mean, I guess that's the story behind it. I did try to use the copperhead as well. Neither one of them were able to cut through it. Not for lack of sliciness. I've checked both of these knives were razor sharp out of the box. There's a couple different things that go into it. But, and I'll mention this in the copperhead video as well. The Revo.Beseek or Revo.Beseek is a 9CR18 MOV blade steel. The copperhead is a 14C28N blade steel. What happened to my copperhead and what happened to my Beserk? My Beserk clearly had some teeth chipping. I originally thought it was a rolled edge, and then I tried to clean it up, and it just ended up being these micro chips that are in there. Okay, see, I'm really good on that side. The Revo.Beseek, let's see here. Are you gonna focus for me? Come on, sweetheart, focus. It's not going to. You really can't see any damage to the edge. Now, I was able to strop this Revo.Beseek back to life. It does need some honing in because it's not the sharpest. So what happened was the 12C28N rolled, while this one gave the appearance of rolling, but ended up really just chipping in the end. So what's my theory behind that? And this is pure theory, After looking up the chemistries on both of these, the 9CR18 MOV is coming in at about 16 to 18% chromium. It has like a 0.85 to 0.95 carbon content, but it also has microscopic traces of vanadium and molybdenum. Somebody tell me how to say that one, because that's a difficult one to say. We'll call it moly. Pop in some moly. While the 14C28N is coming in at 14% chromium, a little less carbon. The carbon content in this is about 0.68. There's no vanadium. Actually, there's sulfur in the 14C28N, which is interesting. Doesn't really do much. It's actually kind of an impurity. But it's got a little bit more nitrogen, so it stabilizes the blade more. So why did 9CR18 MOV chip over the 14C28N? Theory. Let's just run this there. I don't know the hardness of these two. I don't have a way to check that. All I know is the generic chemical composition. I don't know the heat treat. I don't know much past that other than the chemical composition that's generic to the labeled blade steel. This one has a slight bit more of carbon and vanadium in it. Now, the vanadium's not enough to really create those vanadium carbides that the higher level steels see and super fine edges and just, they last forever. You know, I want to say the M390s, the S90Bs, those types of things. So, while this, and this doesn't have enough carbon content either. It's like a 0.85 to a 0.95, but it's not enough when heat treating to create the vanadium carbides. This one has nothing to bond with to really create those carbides. It can create the chromium carbides, but it's not able to really, and chromium carbides are super soft, they're big, they don't really retain their edge as much because they're a much larger grain structure. The larger the grain structure is, the harder it is to retain that edge and that fine edge. You get this fat kind of like just blob in there, you know, and it's hard, but you know, it has a, when, you know, we're not metallurgists here. I just trying to break it down so you guys understand, because I relatively do. So long story short, I think it's the carbon content, which is about 0.30% or 0.3% plus the 0.015 vanadium content that's in there that does add a little bit to the hardness. While this one has no vanadium, much less carbon, so it is going to be a little bit softer. What does that also mean? This is going to roll, it's not going to chip, it's going to be easier to maintain, but it's not going to maintain the edge as long. Now, keep in mind, I was taking this knife, folding the wire around it, and just driving as hard as I could, and I was doing it with both. So it's not that these are bad. I don't know that I question the heat treat or the integrity of Revo blades or the integrity of QSP. I think it's just I did what you're not supposed to do with a knife. You know, smaller wires, fine, but these bigger wires, not so much. That's why I'm not doing a cut test on this. For those of you that fast forwarded, just say I'm not doing a fucking cut test on this. All right, overall thoughts on this knife. As I said, well, not overall thoughts. Well, yeah, overall thoughts. Fuck it. As I said before, I thoroughly love this guy. There is no flipper tab. There is no thumb stud. The only way that you can actually open this knife is if you're good with your thumb, you can get it open. But the Spidey flick works just great. The detent on this is relatively weak, which works out just fine because you can't even get your fingers really in these holes. What I end up doing that I find that I like the most on this is I use the smaller hole and just kind of wing it. And it's fun, it's easy on your fingers, it's great. The great thing about this is the action. It came with 0 blade play, even after beating the shit out of it today, it has no blade play. The ergonomics in your hand, you can bear down like a son of a bitch, because that's why I might compare it to the Manix 2. It has really great choke up ergonomics that you don't feel choked up, but you're choked up enough that you have full control and power behind you. You know, it's got this slot right here. Your finger will slide right there. Your second finger slides right there. Then it's got this jimping up top. Another thing to note, it's got this like dual grind going on. It's a wannabe Tonto, but it's kind of like a Tonto drop point. We'll call it a Dronto or a top point. Coined by Tyler. So it's just interesting. I originally thought, again, that was going to cause me problems when cutting, but it kind of gives you a little bit of both worlds. You don't have the craziest length on the flat edge, and you don't have the craziest length on the drop point edge, so it's not going to be the best at anything, but it does provide quite a bit that I haven't had an issue to where I was cutting something, whether it's slicing, push cutting, or anything, that really made me not like it, right? The pocket clip is great. The fact that it's a frame lock is pretty freaking cool. This lanyard backspacer thing is unobtrusive. You don't really feel it. There's no hot spots on this guy. So ergonomically speaking, this guy's getting an A- at least. It's really good. The stainless steel frame lock is a little tight, but I don't mind it. I mean, this knife feels beefy. I feel like everything should be slightly tight. Let's see here. The fit and finish, I mean, there's not much fit and finish to go over. You got your recessed screws. There's no real liners on anything. I mean, you got a little bit of milling on the inside of the stainless steel liner, which I don't think anybody can see due to the lighting. And I got to fix the lighting on this video on the next one. I'm not going to reshoot this one, but I got to fix that. I haven't taken this apart yet, but I know it's on bearings. You can see it already. The action on it is phenomenal. One thing to watch out for before I let you guys go. So, fantastic blade. Really no sharpening choil or anything, but you have full access to everything without damaging anything, so I really don't think it needs it. Now, if you guys have noticed, I do one of two things. I do that and then move my hand, or I will do this from the top and let it go. So by doing this from the top, I'm not worried about anything. Because the way that this is shaped, I'm kind of hitting the underside of the tang here, and it sits in there fine. I can push as hard as I want, nothing's gonna happen. But let's watch. When I open it from the middle and then let it drop, you're resting right on the freaking meat of your thumb. Now let's see here. Where's this guy at? Dun, dun. See that little tiny annoying as shit cut that's right there? That is from the Revo.Beseek doing this and just chopping that fucking fat part of my thumb. Excuse the language, but it deserves it. That one, I had no idea it even happened. This thing was so sharp, it came down, and then the next time I went to go close it, I'm like, ow, what the hell? And it's because I'm putting pressure on a cut, and I'm like, where did that come from? In the most annoying spot possible. That is annoying. You like virtually can't. I ended up putting super glue over it just to, allow myself to continue using it. So the only thing I really have complaints about is where you naturally want to close or open the frame to allow the blade to close, it will chop your freaking thumb. So you got to do one of two things: be mindful of it, or just get in the habit of hitting it up here. And honestly, that's it. The weight, yes, it's 5.5 ounces, guys. That being said, 5.5 ounces for a knife that feels kind of beastly. I feel like if this knife weighed less, it wouldn't be as good. Like, it just feels good because of the weight and everything. You don't feel like you're going to damage anything. And then I hurt the blade on it, and I'm like, ugh. So I really thought this was like, I'm going to beat the shit out of this thing and be free and clear of everything. And you still can. I wasn't supposed to be using the knife for that. It goes through wood and everything just fine. I checked a lot of different things, so it's fine. The ergonomics on it, great. Like I said, A-ish. The fidget factor is pretty damn good. You only got one option, but if you guys can tell, even after breaking in, I mean, this thing just, it's pretty fidgety, right? Just watch your thumb. The deep carry is nice. The unobtrusive lanyard hole is really nice. And the green backspacer here is pretty sweet. It adds a little bit of complexity to an otherwise simple, relative looking handle until you open the frickin' blade, and then you're like, whoa, what the hell is that? So yeah, this is the Revo.Beseek. The only bad thing we got to say about it is watch your finger when you're closing it right here. It will bite you. Short of that, this knife is pretty freaking sweet, and I think would make anybody happy. And if you're out there, I've never felt the Medford because they're too damn expensive, But if you're out there and you want to try something Medford-ish, from what I can see, please don't condemn me. I don't really give a shit. But from what I can see in having not held a Medford, this looks like a wannabe, mini-me Medford. So kudos for that. I think the design's unique. I think Revo, I'm excited about their other stuff. The fit factor's great. The fit and finish, I guess, is great because there's not much fit and finish to talk about. Pocket clip's great. This knife I can heavily recommend. I picked this knife up, and I honestly, even though I'm reviewing it and carrying it, I chose to carry this over my Super Freak. Now, does that mean hold on, let's back up. That doesn't mean I like this better than my Super Freak, but very rarely do I choose to carry a review knife over my Super Freak or anything like that. So kudos to this knife, kudos to Revo, and the Beserk is definitely an awesome find and buy. So thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Tyler. This is Everyday EDC. You guys stay sharp, stay safe. I don't think we have to wear our masks anymore. I don't really know. But other than that, have a great frickin' day.